Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. So, welcome back to another episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And today's guest is one of those women whose life quietly and then boldly answered the call. And I'm so excited to have you hear her story because it's really amazing. I'm joined by Cathy Derksen, a woman who didn't just reinvent herself in midlife, because I love the midlife. She followed a whisper that turned into a body of work touching women around the world. And I can't believe these things that she's done in the meantime. Cathy is the creator of multiple multi-author books focused on women's stories, wisdom, and possibility, including themes like passion, my favorite, purpose and possibilities, and midlife reimagined, because that's what we're doing. She's contributed to over 20 books and created 9 of her own. Yet, if you'd ask her 5 years ago, is publishing part of your future? I'm sure she would have laughed. Her pivot began with a moment that rearranged everything: a life altering car accident. We'll hear about that. The courage to leave an abusive marriage, and a deep knowing that the life she was modeling for her children and herself had to change. And what followed wasn't a straight line, as it never is. It was intuition, it was courage, it was tenacity. And she walked away from a toxic marriage, a specialized career, because these careers are not what we're here for, and later even the masculine bro culture of the financial industry. Not because she had a perfect plan, but because she trusted this inner voice saying, "This isn't it." So today she helps women reclaim their stories, their voices, and their next chapter, proving that midlife isn't a winding down, it's a waking up. And this conversation is about responsibility without self blame. It's intuition without apology. And what happens when a woman finally listens to the voice she was taught to ignore? Haven't we all been there? I'm so excited to have you here, Cathy. This is going to be so exciting because at the outset, I want to just say that you're such an inspiration when I talk to you, and I know you're going to be an inspiration to the women that are listening. So, first thing I ask every guest is, where are you today? Who is Cathy in 2026? How are you serving? Even more from that intro, we'll talk about all of the ways you got there, but how are you serving this world today in 2026?
Yes, and thank you for having me here. It's wonderful to be part of this conversation. And thanks for that intro that brought so many of those pieces of my life together. And yes, over the last, I guess it's been like 15 years that my journey of twists and turns and finding that right direction has been going on. Where I am right now is really kind of moving more into that feeling that there's something bigger, there's something more, that what I'm doing is great, but there's something bigger I'm supposed to be doing. And so in the last few weeks, especially, I would say I've really been percolating on what is that? What does that look like? How do I get there? And that end of things. So, like you mentioned, a big part of what I've been doing over the last few years is creating multi-author books to give women that platform to share their story, become published authors, build visibility in their business. But I think I really need to move that up a notch with more
Mhm.
retreats, more community, more like what do we do once we have shared our story? Where do we take that story? How do we really use that story? So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's so fun because it all I can feel is expansiveness. And that
That's
is
my
what we
word for
do.
this year,
Oh,
expansion.
well, okay. So
Woohoo!
that wasn't planned, folks. I love, I love having a word for the year. Mine is curiosity, but that's fantastic because that is expansiveness. That's what we do as these human creatures, especially as this feminine energy. So I want to just explore that a little bit because I'm imagining that did not imagine yourself being right here, right now, in this moment, even having this conversation with yourself about expanding, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I want to just explore that. We can talk about this story, but I want to talk about the arc that you feel of you constantly expanding, because I think that's the message that's coming forward, is to share with women, you don't have to know anything to start.
It's true.
You got
Just
to get
that,
on the path, and then just share how your experience. I believe that we just are guided. Our intuition will guide us. The next step will be lit up. And I'm getting goosebumps saying that, because I really truly believe that that was probably very much of the same trajectory for you. You just made a decision. So tell me what that decision was, and then what are the little bits that you can just fill in right now that you felt yourself expanding along the way, because you're not done and you never will be done.
no, no, exactly. And actually next month marks 5 years since I left my job and started out as an entrepreneur to really dig into what I'm here for. And yeah, this journey that you're mentioning too, I'd say it's around 2010 that it really started. And you're right, it started with just an intuitive message. And at that time, the message really was that I'm supposed to be doing something that created a true impact in the lives of women around the world.
Mhm.
And that was it. That was the whole message, but it was dug deep inside. This was
Right.
a key message that wasn't going anywhere. And of course, at that time, I had no idea what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do with that message. And so and like you had mentioned too, I was in the middle of a divorce and all these other things. I went through a complete career change, but at least with that kind of guide of finding something that I could do that would help women change their life. And at that time, of course, like we do, I just was kind of feeling my way based on what I knew. And at that time, I chose to go into financial planning, which is a complete shift from my previous career, because I thought that was how I could help women change their life. Because so many women do say that finance is an area they need more women supporting them with. And yes, I spent 10 years in that world and really, did all the credentials and I did help women change their life with their financial information, but there was so much that I couldn't talk about or do, or, I just felt like I was in a very small box. And I knew that that box was not where I was supposed to be. And that's where, like I mentioned 5 years ago, I just decided, no, I need to get out of this box. And again, I had no idea what was next, but I knew I needed to figure it out myself. And yes, like you were saying, 5 years ago, I would never have guessed that this was where I would be, because none of this was part of my past. None of it was on my radar. And it has really all come from listening to intuition,
Mhm.
following that feeling of what's right. How am I really serving? And I think too, kind of getting to know more what my real gifts are.
Right.
Because of course, before it's, when you're young, you just follow a path of I go to university, I get married, I have kids, that kind of path that our society has put out for us, but hadn't really thought about, what really excites me, what are the things that make me feel like I'm doing the right thing. And so it's interesting and exciting to know that at any age we can set out on this journey and figure out
Yeah.
what is it I'm here to do now.
Right. Right. So I want to lean into this idea that you don't know what you're doing. Because honestly, that is not the program that the masculine playbook gives us. The
No.
masculine playbook is about goals, smart goals. I used to teach those. I'm so embarrassed to even say that. Smart goals, of figuring it out, of strategy, of competition, all of that. Like that is what we get, the playbook. It's handed to all of us, everybody on
Yeah.
the planet. Women take it because, there isn't another playbook. And
Yet.
yet, the truth is, and you're here, and so am I, and so are the women that I interview, as a testament that you don't have to figure it out. Actually, I love Marie Folio. She wrote a book called Figure It Out. And even she's like looking back, going, yeah, that was my younger self telling me that. Because it's that intuition and the idea that you are always given the answer. Always. So talk about some of the breadcrumbs that you got along the way that your intuition was just super loud because it's very soft most of the time. But sometimes it says, okay, look, like for instance, when you decided to end your marriage, or when you decided to get into the financial realm or get out of it, just share some of those ways that you heard it, because it's so hard to explain to women that haven't experienced it yet that this truly is the the path, and it's so beautiful, and yet it is kind of scary because that's not how we were taught. So share
Yes.
some of those moments for our audience.
For me, a big part of it is a gut feeling, like literally a gut feeling. And I think when I first started noticing it was, like you mentioned, around the divorce. And then in the work that I had been doing up to that point, I worked in medical genetics, mostly in hospital labs. And the work environment I was in at that time was also very negative, and I would say borderlining on abusive as well. The doctor I worked under was just toxic. And and so when I was going through the divorce, I was asking myself those questions of, can I see myself doing this full time for another 20 years? And I could
Mm,
literally feel it in my gut. This no, get out of here now. And
mhm.
even though I would be walking away from a 25-year career, a good paying job with good benefits and all those other things that we've always been told, hold on to those. That's what's important, right? And but that feeling in my gut that no, you need to get out of here now was really kind of the beginning of it, and really listening to that. And and that's when, after that and thinking more about, okay, what else am I supposed to be doing then? And that's when this message about the, helping women around the world kind of came to me. And I would say going from there, the little pieces that pointed me in directions, how I recognize them, because of course there's things that we do just out of impulse, there's things we do out of fear, there's things we do like, so how do I know it's intuition and not just something else pushing me around? And to me, that difference is it feels light.
Yeah.
Like a lot of other decisions you make, you still feel tight and heavy.
Hmm.
Whereas when you make a decision through intuition, I find that it just makes me feel lighter and open,
Hmm.
and almost like doors are opening, like doors you hadn't seen before, but there's an
Yes.
openness to it. And so that's
Hmm.
how I would describe recognizing when it's
Yeah.
intuition. And especially as I moved along, when I first left my job, my corporate job in financial planning, again, like I said, I didn't really know besides this message about helping women around the world. And at that time I thought, oh, it'd be more of a coaching thing, like maybe money coach, life
Hmm.
coach, that kind of, because again, we kind of move forward based on what we do know.
Right.
And but even when I started into that, it didn't feel right.
Right.
It just felt like I had my feet were stuck in mud, that I was making progress, but it was like,
Hmm.
this doesn't feel right. And I had started getting involved in these multi-author books around 2019. And even when I did the first one, it was a local group here doing some books. And I knew they'd been doing these other books before, but again, hadn't really felt this is what I'm supposed to do. And then they started with one, it was called Emotional Intelligence, Mental Health Matters. And that was when I'd got to the point where the dust had kind of started settling on the divorce and the other complete career change. And I had two teenagers along the way with me through all this chaos. And it was again a calling that my story needed to be in a book to help other women. And it was almost like I wasn't allowed to say no. Just that feeling inside me was, no, you are doing this now. Your story will be in that book right now.
Hmm.
And like I said, I'd never done that before. I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily, the group that I was working with was very good at walking us through it, getting us set up and all that done. And again, I had no plan on doing more, but there was just this thing that was like, okay, now you do another one with them. Now you do another one with them. And like you mentioned, December, I launched my most recent book, and that was the 23rd book multi-author anthology that I've contributed to. And again, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, none of this was, and now 23, like when I think about it, I think, wow, how did I do that? Like, how did I get 23? And many of them were with various different groups. I think I've worked with over a dozen different publishers now in all these
Mhm.
different books in different communities. And a big part of it just was that feeling of doors opening, walk through the door. Even though you don't know where the door is going, there's just a feeling that that's the door I'm supposed
Yeah.
to go through. And you hadn't even
Yeah.
seen the door before, but there it is. Now it's open.
Mhm.
And it,
Mhm.
and it really was, again, in that path of here I was trying to figure out, get this coaching world going and knowing that wasn't quite right. And at the same time, doing various books with various groups. And it came to me again, almost like this message that this is what you're supposed to be doing. You are supposed to be creating these opportunities for other women.
Yeah.
And it just, at that point, I went to one of the publishers I'd worked with. I proposed a collaboration that, hey, I'll create my themes and titles. I'll bring together my people. We'll create these books together. And again, I'd
Mhm.
never done that before. I'd never worked
Right.
directly with a publisher. I'd never coordinated like 20 people from all over the world to do anything, let alone it.
Mhm.
So the first book I created myself, I called it Embrace Courage.
Yeah. Let's
And I
do
think a
it.
lot of that title came from me knowing that I had to
Right.
embrace courage
Right.
to
Yes.
step into this whole new world.
So it's so fun to listen to the story because number one, I would say every woman should ask themselves that question that you asked yourself from that career in the medical profession with the cranky man, because I've had many bosses like that. I probably was one of those bosses at one point because I got the masculine playbook down so well. And yet it was so powerful. It was almost like a muscle test that you did. What would this feel like if I was here for another 25 years? And your whole body screamed. So,
Yeah.
number one, I love the idea that you've said feeling several times and your body, because I really truly believe that that is our connection to our feminine energy, men and women, but women
Yes.
especially, is
Yes.
our body and our emotability. And we've talked about over the decades that women have too much emotion. Well, emotion is what that feeling is that tells us the feedback that we need. So you got those feelings all along the way. And for me, it's the trust and the faith that is so critical to this
Yes.
whole entire lifestyle or life beingness, that you just trust it every step of the way. Every when
Yeah.
you say a door open, it's not because you pushed it open, it's not because you kicked it open, it just opened. It feels like magic because I call myself the queen of magic. It just magically
Oh,
shazam,
yes.
it opened.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is the beautiful energy that women can step into at any time that they choose.
Yeah.
So how would you say to a woman who's going, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I have this rote life, I'm stuck, I can't get out. What is the best wisdom that you would share? Because you have been in those places and yet you allowed an opening along the way. What is the best wisdom that you can share with them
Yeah.
about how to move through this?
Yeah, and I would say too that a big part of it, like the books are the main kind of service that I do right now, but the big picture of everything I do is really focused on midlife women, helping them to see that there are opportunities and possibilities far beyond what they even imagine right now. And so with the books, I find that what I'm doing is I'm giving women examples. And because I think, especially as women, we learn from each other's stories. So we might be feeling like I'm stuck in what I'm doing. I can't do anything else. My family keeps telling me, settle down, calm down, just go back to normal. This is a phase you're going through. So with me, with the stories, I think the more we see and hear about examples of other women doing crazy things, new things, stepping into new worlds, the more it shifts that feeling. And to me, the word possibilities is where I put the pin on the wall. Because possibilities to me means things that we can't even see yet, things that we can move towards, but we can't see. So, one of my big words of advice on especially midlife women is, like I was saying, it's usually our families and friends who are saying, oh, settle down, calm down, get over it, go back to normal. So, really, one of the key things is finding communities of women who are letting each other explore, letting each other know that there are opportunities and possibilities. And I think for so many women, it's even around giving ourselves permission, because we don't give ourselves permission to even think about what we want. What would excite me? What would make me feel like there's a reason to get out of bed today? And, it was one thing when we were younger and we had, a busier career, possibly family, there was all these other things we were busy with. Whereas as we get older and perhaps the kids have left home, perhaps our career has changed, and there is more of that space of, okay, what am I supposed to do next? And when you think about it too, that old model of retirement was set up at a time when people were only expected to live into their late 60s, maybe early 70s. So the idea of puttering until you die, like really waiting to die, perhaps that
Exactly.
worked, 60, 80 years ago. But now we have to plan to live into our 90s and our hundreds. And we don't want to do that sitting on the couch watching soap operas. This is the time for us to actually use our life experience, our connections, our what's inspiring us, and do like follow that. And so to me, it's about that finding community, finding other women who are saying, yes, we are going to follow a path. We're going to do something new. We're going to do this together. Because to me, community is really important. And now, like especially with Zoom and everything else, we can connect with people around the world easily. So step out of your normal circle, follow just something that you love, something positive.
Yeah. So, and that is, I hear this more and more about the download or the voice or the conversation. You're here to support women on the planet, right? When you hear that message, and it's so big. Like mine was, you're here to wake up the feminine on the planet. As I'm sitting on the beach in Playa del Carmen, and the ocean's talking to me, and I'm like, okay, you have the wrong, you have the wrong chick. Sorry. Moving on. And yet it has been there because once you get it, and it's as I said, it's a little challenging to describe that to somebody who hasn't heard it yet. It doesn't mean that the voice isn't there. It's just that
Yeah,
sometimes we're
yeah.
so busy and loud we don't slow down enough to listen. Yet that is so big, and once again, we don't have to figure it out. So for women that are hearing these messages, because really what you're doing in my opinion, is leaving a legacy. This
Yes.
legacy, especially through stories. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but once the brain goes through menopause, it completely rewires for women. And one of
Mm,
the ways that we stay in our wisdom and youthfulness, right, our vitality, is through stories. That
perfect.
actually is a healing process for our brains rewiring. So, because of that, your stories, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that is a legacy that you are leaving to heal the planet.
Perfect.
Wow.
That's one of the things I love about books, because 100 years from
Yeah,
now, someone could pick up that book.
right, right. And women will be reading it, well, men too, I'm sure, but women will be reading it hundreds and hundreds of years from now to
Yeah.
hear those stories. And because our world is so technologically advanced, I believe that we are really craving the connection. That's that feminine energy. So,
Yes.
talk about that with the women that you have touched through the authorship, though, of these books, because
Yeah.
you're touching lives from their stories, but also their experience. I'm sure you have seen some tremendous, I don't know, transmutations, alchemization, transformations with them. Share some of those
No,
stories because I
definitely,
think that's
definitely.
just beautiful.
Yes, yes. And a lot of the shifts, I would say too, come from that stepping into possibility. and stepping out of the little boxes we've been living in and realizing that there's more. And, like they say that like 92% of people have it on their bucket list to become published authors, but only 5% of people ever do. So even just that feeling of stepping into that, yes, now I am a published author, starts to shift that feeling of I'm stepping into something I never thought I would accomplish. And one of the other things I've been doing with my authors is we've been doing billboards in Times Square, which is
Oh,
again another huge bucket list that most people look at those things
yeah.
and think, well, wouldn't that be cool to be on a billboard in Times Square? But I'll never do that.
Right.
And literally, some of the women I've gone with, we've had our billboards up, are in tears,
Mm,
looking at themselves up here in New York City on Times Square in the bright lights, thinking, wow, I never thought I would do that.
yeah.
And then that feeling of now what else is possible.
Right.
And one of my favorite stories with my authors, one of the one of my authors, I think she actually just turned 75 this year. And I met her I guess about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that time she was feeling very like no one cared what she had to say,
Mm,
and she'd spent most of her life feeling she had to hide what she was all about, like what her real, like she's very into energies and crystals and this
mhm.
whole kinds of thing that none of her family or her like that normal part of her community
Right.
understands at all. So she spent most of her life feeling she had to hide it and that nobody wanted to hear about it. She was in my first book, so my Embrace Courage book, and that started opening things up for her because she got a lot of great feedback from people that they loved what she'd written and they
Mm,
related with her story. And then next thing I knew, she got involved in one of my next books that was called Midlife Awakening. And then next thing I knew, she was now doing her own solo book. So since that, so it's been
oh,
roughly 2 years. She has participated in two of my books and released two of her own solo books. And now is doing a podcast channel. She's doing like local things. Like this is again, she's 75 years old and had spent
yeah.
most of her life, like into her 70s, hiding
Hmm.
what she was really excited about in life and now realizing that no, I can talk about this. People want to hear about it. And yeah, to have, here she is figuring out YouTube, doing shows and events and all this stuff. And now she's already talking about her next book,
Oh my gosh,
so
that's
it's,
so fun.
that's one of my favorite stories.
I love that so much because I did a podcast last week on Ikigai. So I don't know if you know what Ikigai is, but basically it's a blue zone in Japan where they went and researched. A guy wrote a book on people that are, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and how they thrive, right? They're not sick and they don't retire. They I call it rewiring and refiring because this whole notion that, as you said, sitting on a porch or watching a soap opera seems really boring. And yet I believe that that's what this movement is towards. And this woman that you just described is a walking example of that, is that we stay young in um, time because we're destined to be on the planet for much longer, especially with all the advancements they're going to do with AI and medical. But what are we going to do with that time? How are we going to show up and be on our purpose and our passion? And I know that's such an important component for you. So share with the audience about purpose and passion from your perspective, because it's a driver. It will allow us to be happy for the rest of our lives. We don't have to give up at any particular age.
No, exactly. And we do need to stay social. We need to stay learning. We need to be doing new things. And that's what, like you say, will keep us young no matter what our real age is. And one of my favorite quotes, it's Howard Thurman's quote. And he's like, don't
Mhm.
ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. And that, as soon as I saw that quote, yes, it anchored in everything I do because it's all about figuring out what makes you come alive and go do that.
Yeah.
And this idea too that we are what is shifting the world. I mean,
Yeah.
as we know, the world right now has a lot of stuff going on that we don't want to talk about.
Right.
But the more we shift that positive energy and the more we bring people who are coming alive, I believe that is what is going to shift the world, that
Right.
we need
Absolutely.
more of that.
Hmm.
And so reminding people, find what makes you come alive and go
Right.
do that.
Right. The phrase is what you focus on expands.
Yeah,
So if we focus on that passion, that purpose, that aliveness, that excitement, then we will see more of that. And I
yes,
love the idea of NLP because, I've been doing that for years. And yet we are just mirroring what is inside of us. So if we don't like what we see outside of us, then it's an inside job. It's not about it's not like being in a movie theater. We're the projector. And it would be like going into a movie theater going up to the screen and trying to move the people around on the screen when it's happening from the projector. So it's so fascinating to listen to you as a wise woman say that when we do focus on um, that energy that's in us, that aliveness,
yeah,
that is what is going to heal the planet because it truly is. And
yeah.
it is that critical mass, the 100th monkey theory, the tipping point that when we all begin to do that, we're not here to fix anybody, including ourselves, because we're not broken. But if
Yeah.
we begin to do that, then life will dramatically shift. And I really believe that 2026 is about this rebirth. So let's talk about 2026, and you said you're expanding, you're looking at some new opportunities for you of how you can serve these women. What would you like to say to the audience that they can come to you, either through your website, your social media, and connect with something that they could do right now? What's a
Mhm.
fun thing that you have for us?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love for them to connect to, as far as social media goes. LinkedIn is where I hang out the
Okay,
most, so find me
perfect.
there. And my
Yep.
website is inspiredtenacity.com. And on there,
We'll
I've
have
got a
that
lot of,
in the show notes. We'll have all that in the
yeah,
show
and
notes.
I've got, you can download free PDFs of my books. You can check
Cool.
out what the new opportunities are for the books coming up. And one of the things too that I'm starting to add more on, like I mentioned, the billboards in Times Square. So taking my
Hmm.
authors to New York City, we do like a 3-day retreat and they get to
Hmm.
meet each other and do fun things. Last time we had one woman came from Germany, another one came from Australia, and it was just a really fun time. But I'm definitely planning on doing more retreats and in other places. My big vision is places like New Zealand and Australia and Europe and really go places. So those are some of
Hmm.
the new things that I'm percolating on and yeah, and really building more opportunities for women to get published. But really, like you say, that idea of sharing our stories, leaving that legacy, and really inspiring the women around us to follow that too. And I think part of it too is almost a responsibility that when we have this calling for positive things, that we follow that because we really are role models for each other.
Yeah.
And I always love to say that courage is contagious.
Yes. How do you think what was the impetus for your courage to write that first book? Because it's always just mirroring our life, right? That this was the courageous part, that you jumped into the deep end of the pool without a life vest. What are some of the feelings that came up for you just to move you into that choice, because it is all about choice.
Yes,
And that,
yes.
I love that that was your first book, because that's what I'm going to ask everybody listening to this is step into some small act of courage. And what does that look like? So how did you show that for yourself when you were starting that path?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of it, when I first started making all these changes was that idea that I'm being a role model for my kids.
Mm,
And if I'm settling for a life that is clearly negative and toxic and not positive, then that's the example I was leaving for my kids. So I think that was a big part of the motivator for me to really dig deep and just take these things on. And yeah, finding courage and just knowing that you're going in the right direction.
right.
And a big part of that really does come back to that internal feeling of, yes, this is the right next step. This is the right answer. This is the next thing to do. But I mean, like I said, a lot of those big changes were literally intuitive callings of this is what you're supposed to do next. This is where you're supposed to be going. And I
Mhm.
think that action to take, I think really is to slow down enough to hear those voices and then to think, what is that next step?
Yeah.
And going back to what you're saying about courage too, that I think that's a huge part of it. That so many
Mhm.
we're often just feeling stuck where we
Yeah.
are, but not feeling that discomfort enough to change that. And
Right.
so, think about, like, do you want to stay where you are? Do you want to continue to feel stuck?
Mhm.
Or do you want change?
Yeah. I have a saying that pain pushes until vision pulls.
Yeah, I love
And
that. Yeah.
sometimes, just like you were in that environment that, way, way back with the medical career, the pain finally just got to the place where you could see a vision. You didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that you were I hear this all the time on, I like reality shows, so that people are saying, I want to make my kids proud, right? So we can borrow courage, we can borrow that approval. At the end of the day, it's all about us, but we need a place to start. So I think that's just so beautiful that you were open to that. I want to make them proud. I don't want to be a model for something that I don't truly believe in. And this idea that 2026 is this awakening. It is a rebirthing for women. What is the best wisdom that you have for 2026? Because I know you said your word was, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget it already.
Expansion.
Expansion, yes. I'm like I get lost in my questions. Your word for 2026 is expansion. So give us your wisdom, your inner um, guidance that says, why did you pick that word? What does that mean for all of the women on the planet? And what can a woman hear you today and say, I'm going to take a step towards that?
Yes, yes. I think my expansion word came from in my business. I knew I was at a point where I need to start scaling. So at first I was thinking
Mhm.
scaling or scale would be my word. And I thought, no, that's too narrow. It's too shallow. And then I
Right.
realized that there's so many other parts of my life that I need to expand. My social life, my personal development, my business, and the impact that I'm creating. So all of those things really need to expand. It's not just about scaling my business. It's
Right.
expanding all of those things. So that's when I
Mhm.
shifted into the word expansion. And I think as far as, leaving them with some words of wisdom, I'd go back to that idea of finding community, finding those people that
Mhm.
will lift and encourage you to follow your own intuition and to, have the courage to not step away from your normal people necessarily, but to step a little outside of that circle and get a feel for
Yeah.
who else is out there and
Mhm.
and really start following that passion.
Yeah. And I love that because we are who we hang out with, right? We are the
Yes.
people
Yeah.
we have coffee with.
Yes.
And if we begin to expand that circle, just like the 75-year-old that you were talking about, she went from writing a chapter in a book, then she expanded herself to writing her own book, and then she started a podcast. So she then began to expand her circle to people she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to bet that she expanded herself by she had to reach out to resources, whether they were community directly or through Zoom or any other version. We can do that for ourselves to
Yeah.
expand who we are. And so what a great word for 2026. It's just magical. I know you didn't plan any of this, and I know you don't know what the future is going to hold for you. And I also love to have women drop into their future self. So I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes for a minute and drop into your future self because she's got big, big plans. All of our future selves do. and look back, and she's got a message. She's got a message not just for you, but for the entire planet of what is the opportunity for us today that will create this magnificent future. And that's an intuitive conversation. So I want you to just share what your future self is telling us.
Mm. Yes. I think she's really saying to continue to think bigger and to think about that impact that, and like I was mentioning, the books are part of what I'm doing, but I really feel the bigger part of the potential impact I can make is more, even in getting into more speaking and that kind of thing, and really focusing on helping midlife women to get that message and to give themselves that permission. So I see that as kind of where I'm going, is more into that, really connecting with more women,
Hmm.
creating more community.
Yeah. Well, we are community creatures. I mean, it goes back to the tribal. I don't know if you've heard of this, the grandmother hypothesis, and it's about how tribal women, pre communities that we have here, related. And it was the women in their midlives after menopause that were the wise leaders of the tribes.
Mm.
And that there is a tribe in oh, I think it's Africa. I forget the name of the tribe, but that it's currently in today's world that is as close of a replicant of what that is. And so for any women that are listening, our midlives are our sweet spot. This is when
Yeah,
we get our superpowers.
yeah.
And so just to know that that's the truth of who we are on this planet as wise women, as the wisdom bearers, as the way showers. What do you dream that women will be leading the planet to do in, I don't know, 20 years?
Yeah, and I think, again, back to where things are right now and where we would all love them to be. I see women, and like you say, using that wisdom and that community to demonstrate that we can have productive economies, we can have successful countries using peaceful, cooperative, collaborative systems and not the
Mhm.
competitive, violent systems that we're in the middle of right now. Because I think, again, going back to the idea of community and feeling like we are one,
Mhm.
I think is where the women will bring that shift because collaboration and connection are what we do naturally.
Mhm.
And yeah, I imagine a world where that is how we do things, and that, between countries, within countries, that it is focused on positive connection and collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that we women are leading the way in a very, very powerful energy. And it is that energy, it is that frequency that is the feminine energy. And because for the last 2000 years or so, we've been getting that playbook that is all those things you said. It's just masculine energy, and they both have a place. It's
Yes,
just that if one is in the dominant role, then we don't have balance. So here's to balance in 2026
that's
and
right.
expansion.
Yes.
So, if you would like to just share and leave us with what is the moment to rise to for women in this moment, in this very month of January, because January is the beginning. So, whoever's listening to this, what is something that they can rise into, they can begin to expand right now in January?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would go back to that quote that I was mentioning too, about finding what makes you come alive. Because to me,
Mhm.
that's where it starts. It
Yeah.
starts by us, because it's so easy to just feel stuck in feeling frustrated or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like that you're not in control. Whereas shifting that a bit and just thinking, what is that one thing that makes me feel positive? What's that one thing that makes me feel alive, that makes me feel I'm creating something, I'm contributing to something? And just start there. Start with identifying that and then start expanding it, whether it's focusing
Right.
on it for a couple minutes at a time, whether it's finding a block of an hour a day that you can actually do whatever that is. And that could be, for some people, that is being a great grandmother, really
Mhm.
helping that next generation to develop and feel loved and connected. Or whether it is creating podcasts and big events where you're sparking activity and excitement in the masses. So don't worry about it that it needs to be huge. It needs to
Right.
be what makes you come alive. It could be painting, it could be traveling, it could be singing, it could be, there's so many things it could be.
Yeah.
But identify that and work on expanding how much time every day that you're doing that.
Mhm. You heard it. This is something that is so simple, and you can start right now. Just start listening to yourself and finding that place that makes you come alive. That is such beautiful wisdom to share with those that are listening today. So, Cathy, this has been a beautiful experience. It's been full of great insights and wisdom that anybody can take and begin today. And that's what it's all about. Don't wait. Don't wait for the magic to start happening. Create the magic right now. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.